So the other day I was exercising my thumb, or the extensor pollicis longus if you want to get more specific, doing the routine movement that most of us do. But this video in particular caught my attention. Now I want to go over my emotional responses to this video. The first one was entertainment. My pattern recognition and everything in my brain was saying, oh, this is going to be a juicy video. It's entertaining. I'm going to watch it. The second emotional response I had was that of secondhand embarrassment. I felt cringed. I felt awkward, and it was awkward. The third emotion I felt was relief. I felt relieved that I was on this side. I was the socially well-adjusted individual that was on the majority. I felt good. And then the fourth emotional response that I had was firsthand embarrassment. I was embarrassed that I was so childish and immature. I felt bad because I reacted instead of responding. I felt bad because I didn't really process the information in front of me. I was just digesting it, consuming it, a part of the machine. I wasn't using my brain to think in that moment. And so this led me to some research where I was watching more videos, saving them, looking through the comments. And unfortunately, while this was sort of the majority reaction, the expected reaction, the average reaction.
If you are trying to bully me or be horrible
but
to
where's
me...
the girl? You better start talking or
Please don't
things
film
are
my son
gonna
while
get
he's
a
at
little,
school,
let's say...
eating his lunch. Just let him enjoy his time in his own. Why don't you instead go and hang with him?
The one video in particular made me really sad. A video of a teacher encouraging her students to fight in class. This reminds me of my experience as a high school physics teacher. You see, I was hosting a study session, and one of the students in particular was definitely not as socially adjusted as the others. And as we do, the students started marginalizing and ostracizing the student. And I felt really saddened by that. So the subsequent or following lunch periods, I began stealing away some of those kids, and I sat them down. And the initial reaction that I would often get from my students was, hey, well, I wasn't being mean. Like, I promise I was trying to. And I'd immediately calm them down and say, hey, I'm not upset. I'm not disappointed. You're not in trouble. I just think that this is a really good opportunity to learn. And I brought up the story of the Turpin case, Jordan Turpin. You see, Jordan Turpin was a girl with improperly cut bangs. She was smelly. She was dirty. She was socially awkward. She was the cootie girl at her school. She was ostracized. She was marginalized. She was bullied. Little did people know she was being abused in her house by her parents, her siblings being tied up to the bed frame occasionally. In fact, they were so hungry sometimes that they would eat ketchup out of ketchup packets or eat tissue because their own parents wouldn't give them food. The only social interactions that Jordan Turpin had was that she shared between her siblings, and was occasional videos that she was able to see of Justin Bieber when she stole the phone from her parents. Nobody knew. Who was to know? It so happened that one of Jordan Turpin's classmates was a doctor, or eventually grew up to be a doctor. And when he was going through Facebook, stalking his old friends and his old classmates and seeing what had become of them, he realized what had happened to Jordan Turpin. And he wrote in his little article or his post that maybe it's best if we befriend the Jordan Turpins of the world, because you never know what the person next to you is going through. And so I told my students, let's befriend the Jordan Turpins of the world. The following study periods, my students began talking to this student. They would say, hey, nice Minecraft base, or hey, nice hair today, dude. And slowly but surely, they began bringing him back into society. Now, before you hear the story and think, oh, what a saint, Tim, what a great thing. I didn't tell this to my students because I was holier than thou, nothing along those lines. I told this to my students because I felt guilt and I felt ashamed, because similar to that classmate of Jordan Turpin's who eventually became a doctor, I also went through Facebook and I perused to see what had become of my prior classmates. One classmate in particular, I remember sharing several classes with this individual. They were undoubtedly a popular kid. They were aggressive, and they would have after school fights. And if you were there and you had camera footage of those fights, you were in it, you know? You were the it kid. You had the footage. Well, when I was looking through Facebook and when I saw his name show up, apparently he had tied his 4-year-old brother to a radiator, and subsequently his brother died. And I felt so guilty and so ashamed because not once, as I was enjoying all that drama and that aggression and the fighting and the coolness and all of that, not once did I think maybe there was some past hurt and trauma that this individual was going through. And obviously, I didn't think that it can result into something so horrible as a 4-year-old dying. I don't blame myself. It doesn't serve any point. And I don't want to be misconstrued here. I'm not saying that this individual going through past trauma justifies his actions. It doesn't. But similar to medicine, similar to engineering, similar to general problem solving, understanding the source and the mechanism of action can really help us better find solutions. You see, when we hear in the news about school shootings galore and we hear about all these bad things like 4-year-olds being tied up to radiators and dying, it's really easy to get caught up on the individual, to chase the individual marbles. But instead of chasing those individual marbles, I think it's more efficacious if we look at the hole in the bag. And one of the holes in the bag, in my personal opinion, is mental health. It's bullying. It's the normalization of bullying. You see, the quote at the beginning of this video was by Igor Stravinsky, a composer. And he actually composed the song at the introduction of this video. And he said, "To listen takes effort. Hearing is of no merit. A duck hears also." And it just makes me think about how many times we're told of these adages. Walk in someone's shoes for a mile, all these things, and we hear it, but we're not listening. I'm not listening until now, and I'm 24. It's been a really long time. And what caused this change in my perspective of these words is the fact that I doubt myself now. I think it's two-part. First of all, if you have a message you want to convey, you have to put art and purpose into it. You have to deliberately craft it. Obviously, Stravinsky is an amazing composer, and he composed that initial song that we were listening to. A lot of us have seen plenty of public service announcements that are, well, horrible, cheesy, sappy, half-assed. They either care too much or they don't care enough. And why should I bother listening? Because there's no effort into it, and it's just for publicity, right? So obviously, I think that putting more attention and care to your message is important. But second of all, the onus is on us as listeners to doubt ourselves, to not say that we know, to not have full confidence, but entertain the thought that maybe we don't know and maybe we're not in the right. The initial reaction that I always had when listening to these is, of course, I never bully. But I have to admit, I'm a part of the machine just as much as they are, because I find entertainment and value in it. And I should stop. I should stop indulging in that behavior. I should recognize that I am the problem, and maybe there's some benefit. Maybe I can find myself as that common denominator. To be vulnerable, to be willing to grow. I say all of this not because I have an answer. It's really complicated if you think about how to tackle mental health and all the residual problems that follow mental health. But I guess my main purpose here is to just share a positive word, to put emphasis and care in my composition, the art and the message that I'm trying to convey today. And hopefully someone out there, perhaps you, will be listening, taking an effort to listen. I thank you all for watching. I hope this wasn't too much of a Debbie Downer, but yeah. What's your thoughts on this? Am I being like sappy, weak? What is your perspective? I'd like to know, but that's my honest take on the normalization of bullying.